everybody. I'm here today with a longtime friend of mine, Phil Krone. Phil, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jim.
Good, good. Phil and I are both Kellogg alums, and God, it must be 20-some years since I think we first
A big plus.
first met. Yeah. It's been a long time. And Phil is with the company. He's actually the founder and owner of Productive Strategies, which helps companies increase their sales, mostly through more effective techniques. So we want to talk today a little bit about, I'm going to use the title, Closing the Sale. So Phil, my first question is, it seems like a lot of salespeople that I run into, they get in a sales call and they just talk. You almost see sometimes the prospect is falling asleep, losing interest. I mean, why do they do that? And there must be a better way. I mean, what's your take?
Well, there's a much better way. That way is not very effective in a complex consultative sale. They do it because they think if they just talk enough about the solution, the prospect will connect the dots to his problem and see the value.
Right.
And that works in a small single call sale, but it doesn't work in a complex sale.
Yeah. It seems to me that they feel like they're just throwing enough data out there and something will stick. I actually had an interesting experience. I was working on a project for General Motors, coaching their sales deal, the salespeople at their dealerships. And this lady runs through her presentation, and she happens to mention this particular vehicle is front-wheel drive. Well, I'm a car enthusiast. I really don't like front-wheel drive. I'd rather rear-wheel drive. So here she's presenting a feature of the product, not even sure if I want it or not, and actually is turning me off.
Right. What she failed to do is sufficient discovery. And what we teach is a form of consultative selling called focus selling. And in focus selling, the skill that has to be developed and a process has to be developed to accompany the skill is the skill of discovery. In a complex sale, you have multiple sales calls. It's high risk to the buyer. You're dealing with someone who has a low risk tolerance. A group's going to make the decision. A salesperson probably won't even be there when the ultimate decision's made. And you can't separate the seller usually from what you're buying. You're buying a total package. And in those situations, you have to be very, very good at discovery.
Okay. So if I'm selling something like nails, it's pretty simple. Everybody knows what it is and either want it or they don't. If I'm selling a software package or an accounting service or something like that is what you think of as more of a complex
Nails
sale.
don't get sold, they get bought.
Correct.
So somebody walks into a hardware store and they pick up some nails because they don't really care which ones. They might care because of price. But in a complex sales process, you have to create value for the prospect. And you're not usually creating value if all you're doing, going back to your first question, is talking. You have to be doing a very sophisticated discovery process.
Okay, so it seems to me a lot of that is probably more about asking questions and listening to the answers rather than actually, you made me think of something. You told me a long time ago that people really show their expertise by the questions they ask.
That's
not
true.
By what they say.
The person you're talking to will learn a lot more from the questions you ask them than anything you tell about yourself, your credentials, what your experiences have been.
Right. Well, I think about that, and I use that example a lot. And an example I think of, because I've had a fair amount of experience in manufacturing, if somebody is talking about, say, inventory problems, and the salesperson, let's say they're selling an inventory solution, and they start saying things like, well, do you do cycle counts? And, do you keep track of outages and stuff like that? The person starts to say, hey, this guy really knows what he's talking about. I didn't maybe think of that. So I know you've been, teaching this process, focus. Can you give us an example at a success story, perhaps? People seem to always like stories and examples.
Well, I'll tell you two quick ones. The first one is 25 years ago, a law firm came to us and they had lost 5 Fortune 500 shootouts in a row, beauty contests, where they were
Right.
a finalist. It was down to 2 or 3, and it was going, in each case, going to be $500,000, $1 million, $2 million case. And so they were very important, and they lost 5 in a row, and they asked us to do a strategic plan. And we said, we don't think you need a strategic plan. What we think you need is most likely to change your process and your skill level. So we did that, and they won the next 5.
Beautiful.
And
Beautiful.
they thought it was magic.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not magic, it's something we
It's
teach.
technique,
and
yeah.
we can do in any industry. The second one is we had a company that was having trouble in finalist meetings. CEO called us in, said, we don't really need your lead generation service. We have plenty of leads. And we have PhDs and MDs, very well-educated people selling our product.
Sure.
But I don't think we're very good at selling.
Yeah.
And so he and 9 of his people went through our focus selling course, and over 3 months we did 3 things. We upgraded their consultative selling skills. We created multiple custom sales processes, depending on who they were calling on.
Okay.
And we coached them over a 3-month period. So at the end of the course, he turned to his people and said, I'm going to pull a lead out of the funnel, and I'm going to use the sales process we just spent all this time developing, and I'm going to report back to you, and I'd like everybody in the group to do the same. So he pulled a lead out, and he called the company, the prospect, and they said something, Jim, I'm sure you've heard over the years. We're very happy with our current source.
Sure.
We have a contract. The contract's not up for a year, but if you'd like to come in, we're always looking for new ideas, and you're welcome. So he thought, gee, this is terrific. Very low risk
Yes,
chance.
sure.
It's a long shot. I'll go in, I'll use the new sales process, and I'll get an at bat. So he goes in, and we're coaching him before the meeting. We're debriefing after, and he has an excellent meeting. It leads to a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th meeting. And after about 2 months, they called him in and they said, this is a publicly traded company. CEO's name was Mark. They said, Mark, we've decided we're not going to go out for bid. We think the contract is going to be about $1 billion a year for 5 years. We think we could save 50 to 100 million if we went out for bid. You've persuaded us there's more value in you coming around the table, becoming our partner, designing a custom program for us. So they ended up becoming Fortune magazine's fastest growing publicly traded company in 2012.
Wow.
That was quite a story.
That is quite a story.
And the
That
nice
quite
thing
a
is there's a
story.
lot of reasons that a company's successful. We were a small piece of that,
Sure.
but we were an important piece. The CEO has written us several letters that indicated that without the newer sales process, they never would have won
Right.
that first account.
Right, right. You know, I'm going to ask you to tell one other story that you told me a long time ago, and I guess I won't say the company name, but they were making an engine additive,
Yes.
and what we found was in World War II we were losing more planes to engine failure than being shot down. And why don't you just tell that story? Because I think it's a real clever marketing success, really, in a strategy.
Well, that product is graphite that gets added in an oil change. And our client came to us and said they had just spun off their manufacturing and they wanted to become a sales organization. And the first thing we did was some research with some car dealers to find what they thought of the product. And what they told us was they didn't like the product because it was very good for putting in a car that was knocking and could make the car engine run smoother. It increases lubricity, reduces friction. But adding the cost of this additive to an oil change made them less competitive with the Jiffy Lubes of the world.
Okay.
And it's very important to a car dealer to have customers coming back periodically because the odds of them buying the second car from the same dealer is dependent on whether or not they come back for maintenance. So we went back and said to our customer, we have good news and bad news. The bad news is they don't value your product. In fact, they think it hurts them. The good news is we found out what they do value, which is customer retention. So instead of being a company selling graphite, we're going to put you in the customer retention business, and the graphite will become a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of going in and begging somebody to buy a case of this product, they talk the dealership. We change the sales process to meet with the owner instead of the service manager.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the implications of getting the customer back every 90 days to 6 months for an oil change by guaranteeing 200,000 miles on the engine. So that company has grown 20-25% selling a pure commodity for the last 15 years.
Right. I think that was a great story. And just to illustrate another point, like when you watch our videos, you always learn something. I mean, when's the last time you heard somebody use the word lubricity? Now that's that's first class. Anyway, so I will tell you in kind of conclusion here that Phil, I think, is one of the brightest marketing guys I know. He's a great guy to work with. I've referred a number of clients to him over the years. So highly recommend you talking to him, especially, like he said, if you're selling a product that's a little more complex, that maybe takes multiple sales calls, maybe has multiple people making the decision. It'll be Phil's a good guy to talk to and understand how to really present that. Phil, if people did want to reach out to you for a call or pick your brain or meet with you, what's the best ways to contact you?
The best way would be to call 847-446-0008, extension 1.
Okay.
And we'll talk. There's no cost, no obligation. Or visit our website and just fill out a contact form, www.productivestrategies.com.
Super.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much.
very much.
It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, and hopefully we'll talk soon.